It's time to get in the holiday spirit, exploring what the Oilers have, what the Oilers need, and what they might find under the Christmas tree Thursday morning.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Wednesday Christmas Eve edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. This is my 10th season doing digital hockey content, my third as a host here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and I want to thank everyone that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, where you can bet on live NFL action all season long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's show, we are going to approach our normal three-segment format through three different lenses of Christmas. To start out, to open the show, we're going to take a minute and be thankful for what is working for the Oilers. We'll start out with what the Oilers have working. Our second segment, we will talk about some nebulous ideas that the Oilers need to go their way. And then in our final segment, we'll talk specifics about what the Oilers might hope to have Santa Claus bring them, whether that's literally on Thursday, Christmas Day, or what most of you would think towards the trade deadline. So to start out, I do think it's important, as cheesy as it sounds. Life has been really difficult for a lot of people the last couple of years. Post-COVID, the world has moved at a breakneck pace, and it hasn't been easy. I've definitely had my fair share of personal and professional challenges in that time as well. But I am still here. I get to do this show, and that in of itself makes me feel very lucky, very thankful, and very grateful that I have an avenue for exploring my ideas in hockey. And what makes sports interesting to me beyond just the game itself and the wins and the losses is trying to get a material understanding of those wins and losses. How do you facilitate them? What are the keys to generating victories as often as possible? What are the common occurrences that lead to losses in today's NHL? And in that reflection and a lot of that understanding, I have tried to piece together a coherent hockey ideology and philosophy that we can govern the show around. We can talk about hockey through. And understanding what's made the Oilers successful as of late has been a real fun process of both watching the games and then pouring through the data to try to get an understanding of what's changed on a little more of a micro level. So to put that in the proper understanding, let's say there are 500 puck touches a game. There's probably more than that. I genuinely don't know if the NHL has anything resembling the number of puck touches, but let's say 500 times. That between the 36 skaters on both teams, the puck is touched 500 times in a given game. Obviously, it's going to be challenging for you to remember every play, every sequence, every pass, turnover, sequence leading to a scoring chance. So we have those numbers to put a little bit more of a context behind how a team wins, why a team wins, and those really tell a lot of the stories. So to start out, the first thing the Oilers have going for them right now, and that's important, they have two lines going at 5-on-5 very well. So far this year, and I know Jack Roslovic just came back to the lineup earlier in the week, and he probably is going to take a little while to get going, and he may not be able to recapture the scoring form he got off to. He was on a breakneck pace. He had 18 points in his first 21 games as an Oiler. If you recall, he'd missed the first 3 games of the regular season. He made his Oilers debut the Tuesday night game against the Rangers at Madison Square Garden, second week of the season, and he got off to a great start. Then he had that puck hit him in the lower body, missed 12 games. That's an extensive period of time, not able to be fully conditioned. That's the type of injury, unlike what we talked about with Zach Hyman earlier in the year with the broken wrist. You can still do cardio with the broken wrist, but with the injuries Jack Roslovic endured, he's probably going to need a little time to ramp up. But in the minutes they had, that line of Draisaitl, Roslovic, Podkolzin was outscoring opponents 8-3. They were doing it on a 52% shot share, a 47% expected goal share, and a 37% high danger chance share. That tells me that group was living in transition. The matter of the fact is, if you aren't getting that many high danger chances, but you're getting a lot of them to go in, those are particularly valuable. And we know what makes Roslovic valuable is his wicked release and his skating. And when you get Roslovic in transition, when he can either receive a drop pass, when he can leave a drop pass for Leon, when he can be an outlet in a 2-on-1 to attack the net, and then you have Podkolzin as the world's best forechecker, just hitting anything that moves to get the puck back to the more skilled guys. It creates quite the combination of skill sets. And frankly, it's the ideal alignment of skill sets. You want one retriever, one shooter, one distributor. At minimum, Leon's great at both. Terrific. That works great. Number two, you have Nuge, McDavid, and Hyman, 8-4, 5-on-5 goals advantage, 56% of the shots, 56% of the shot attempts, 55% of the shots, 59% of the of the expected goals, and 63% of the high danger chances. That line is as good as ever. Took a little while to see it. Hyman missed the first month of the season. Then as Hyman was working his way back in, Nuge missed a week. So worth noting there. Number two, what that does in essence is it shortens the game. When you have both McDavid and Draisaitl working well together on two separate lines, it means there's less of the game you need to be worried about. Because if those two are going to play on separate lines, and then you account for power play and you account for special penalty kill, you are going to put yourself in a position where you only need to figure out another 15 to 20 minutes of the game. And that's a lot more manageable. And that's the challenge of when you play them together, and why, if the Oilers can help it, they really need to avoid it. The other big thing, the Oilers' power play this year has taken a big leap. And last year, their power play wasn't bad. It was only 11th, but these numbers year over year. So last year, 98.6% of shot attempts, 98.6 shot attempts per 60 minutes of power play. This year, 117 per 60 minutes. 84.9 shot attempts per 60. This year, a lot fewer shots, only 60.8. But then we start to get to the good stuff. Last year, 8.9 goals per 60. This year, 13.4. Almost four more full goals per 60 minutes than they were creating last year. Expected goals. So to know it's relatively sustainable, almost 3 full more expected goals, 8 more high danger chances per hour of power play time. And they're doing it on 6% better shooting on the power play than they were last year. And that tells me this is relatively sustainable. Because the expected goals are relatively even with actual goals, and because the high danger chances are high and it's not an inordinate number of funky goals, it makes sense that the shooting percentage has gone up. Because they are creating more dangerous offense more frequently, no wonder a lot more of them are going to go in. And I don't know if they're going to stay at 33% for the whole year, but as we sit here around Christmas, it's hard not to feel like the Oilers figured out at least the baseline of what they need on the power play. And special teams units are a little more prone to volatility because they don't play as often. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure. But at the very least, the Oilers got 2 lines going at 5-on-5. They got the best power play in the NHL. That's a good foundation. Coming up next, I'm going to tell you what the Oilers need for Christmas right after this. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly, everything's different. That's what makes live betting so fun with FanDuel. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is at its best when the game starts to shift. Receivers get hot, defenses tighten up, or a momentum swinging turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. Player props that update as guys heat up. You can bet on next touchdown score, drive results, game totals, and so much more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. Triple header of games on Christmas Thursday. Cowboys at the Commanders. The Cowboys 7-point road favorites. The Lions going to Minnesota, where the Lions are 7-point favorites. And then the Broncos going to Arrowhead, where the Broncos are 12.5-point road favorites. And if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thank you to everyone for making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. And thank you so much for helping make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, be sure to check out details about our brand new Everydayer Club, including ad-free episodes. Check out the link in the show notes for more. So, as we pivot to talking about a little more about what you would think about Christmas as a kid, what you need / what you want, it becomes natural to ask for something a little ethereal. Now, if the Oilers wrote health on a piece of paper, dropped it in a mailbox, and hoped it got to the North Pole, I'm not exactly sure what the elves would do. Maybe they would make a concoction, they'd make an elixir to ferment good health amongst the Oilers. But they've missed some games from important players. Zach Hyman missed the first 6 weeks of the season. Nuge has missed 2-ish weeks of games over various points. Of course, Tristan Jarry's been out as of late. Jake Wallman's been out for an extended period of time. Ditto Kasperi Kapanen. There are a number of players who have dealt with a variety of injuries this year. And injury health is a real touchy subject because there are certain types of injuries that you can avoid. Strains, pulls, those are a little more about personal responsibility, about your conditioning, about your preparedness. But a lot of the injuries we're talking about here when it comes to the Oilers, these are not preventable or avoidable injuries. And the thing with hockey, not so much as in football. In football, you know the injuries are coming and they're going to accumulate. In hockey, there are guys who can skate through a whole season without ever really getting a bad lick, and you wouldn't know they were any worse for wear. And then you have the case of the Oilers, where we're talking about a litany of players who have missed time. Jack Roslovic, I forgot to mention before, has missed 12 games. That's not an insignificant amount for a top 6 forward. But this is a team that, by good fortune, has been okay injury-wise the last few years. McDavid missed a number of games last year. Draisaitl missed a bunch of games towards the end of the season last year. Evander Kane missed the entire regular season. Jake Wallman missed a lot of time. Trent Frederick missed a lot of time upon acquisition from the Bruins last year. So with all of that said, I am pointed to some fortune cookie wisdom. And whenever I say fortune cookie wisdom, I don't want people to get the wrong impression. It has merit, but it's not particularly based in evidence or fact. It's the type of thing you would hear your dad say, but injured players stay injured. Guys who are consistently hurt for extended periods of time or frequently are guys who are going to struggle to stay healthy. That's just the simple matter of the fact of how sports work, how life works, frankly. And some of that has to do with preconditioning, where if you injure a certain part of your body, to compromise for that, you're going to move differently. You're going to walk differently. And that different gait in the way you step is going to impact you. The one that always comes to mind to me is the tendonitis Christian McCaffrey had in his leg a couple of years ago before he blew out his Achilles. Those are the types of injuries that are connected to each other, where if you strain your calf, it's only normal you're going to end up having tendonitis issues. You're only going to end up having Achilles and foot issues or knee issues because everything's interconnected. If you have wrist issues, it's going to eventually affect your elbow. If you have shoulder issues, it's going to eventually affect your elbow. Because your body is a complicated system of interconnected systems, it's going to end up impacting you. And there are ways to avoid this. Number one, you can be as well conditioned as you can be. You optimize your recovery. That's probably the single biggest advantage the professional athletes of today have. Teams have managed to alleviate some of the ills of road ice games by streamlining recovery as strongly as possible and making it as optimized as possible for road situations, giving guys individualized treatment plans, the way athletes take care of themselves now, especially when we think about sleep. These are all means of making sure you're prepared as possible. And then the next thing I have on this list, a goalie solution. Now, in our next segment, we'll talk specifically what you would hope to find in a box under the tree, whether it's now or ahead of the trade deadline or maybe a random week in January. But right now, the Oilers have two AHL goalies. I am pre-recording this episode ahead of the Oilers and Flames game on Tuesday night because I'm supposed to do something for Christmas Eve with my girlfriend. So I'm going to do an episode about the Oilers and Flames game, but probably not until middle of the day, Wednesday, going into Thursday. So they're going to start Connor Ingram against the Flames. And Connor Ingram, as I've said, is an AHL goalie. Calvin Pickard is an AHL goalie. This is the National Hockey League. You can get away with this for a week or two. If Tristan Jarry is going to be out anything longer than 2 weeks, the Oilers do not have the luxury of patience. Patience is a virtue until it no longer isn't. I spent the entire summer and up until the acquisition of Tristan Jarry saying that, where Stan Bowman's going to wait as long as he can to make a decision about the coach, about the goalie, because as soon as he makes a decision, then the attention turns to him. He made a decision about the goalie. He acquired Tristan Jarry, a player who had a track record of nagging injuries, even though not a ton of injuries on his radar, a few that were persistent over an extended period of time that were worth noting. Right now, the goaltending situation is what we would call a triage. They are in battlefield medicine situation. You think about the responsibilities of a battlefield medic is to keep the person alive with the best chance of survival. The Oilers can get away with these plugged-in holes for a few weeks. Anything more than 2 weeks of 860, 870 goaltending in augmentation of a goaltending tandem that was already so bad that the general manager felt the need to trade a guy the organization wanted to break out so badly in Stuart Skinner, I think it says a lot about how untenable it became. And I do feel bad for Tristan Jarry, somebody who at various points has had a really rough go of it at the NHL. He was really disappointed to have to go to the AHL at the end of last year. But the Oilers knew his injury history when they acquired him. And then real quick, the last thing I have here, a sign of life from Adam Henrique. The Oilers' weakest link in their day-to-day 12-person forward group is Adam Henrique is the third-line center. I don't think he has the foot speed anymore to impact that role meaningfully. His playmaking isn't terrible, but it's hard for him to be in the right places at the right time. He's still okay on the face-off dot. He's not bad in the corners. But I think in an ideal world, you would like Adam Henrique to either be your fourth-line center or a winger who's really only there to forecheck and to hopefully contribute some secondary offense with that shot. He's always been an above-average shooter for his career, but he's not really in positions. And frankly, Chris Knoblauch doesn't ask his third line to chip in a whole lot offensively. It's more of a game control, get it down there in the other end and hold it. And I think once the Oilers can figure out one way or another what their third line is going to look like or what they need to go out and get to improve it, then I think we can start to talk about what this lineup actually looks like in its totality. Because I think the top six, if healthy, is pretty solid and solidified now. And it's simply a matter of organizing the other forwards into the final six available spots. We are going to take our second and final break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we come back, we'll talk some specifics about what we'd like the Oilers to get for Christmas. Thank you so much to everybody who is hanging out on this Wednesday, Christmas Eve edition of Locked On Oilers. As I said, I will probably have an episode about the Battle of Alberta game at some point for you guys on Wednesday going into Thursday. Thursday itself, I think I will take off, and then we'll be back in action on Friday heading into the weekend. But to wrap up, I did get news today. I was skimming the old Twitter, and I did see teams were interested in reaching out to Marc-Andre Fleury. We'll see if anything becomes of that. I think, in all honesty, that might be the best case scenario for the Oilers, where they wouldn't need to trade anything to go out and get another goalie. It would simply be a matter of convincing Fleury to come in. And that's where we start. The first thing I have written down on the Oilers' actual Christmas list, proper tandem goalie for Tristan Jarry. Calvin Pickard's 3-5-2 with a 3.93 goals against average and an 861 save percentage this year. That is an AHL caliber goalie, if that, playing at the NHL level. Tristan Jarry, even when healthy, has never really been a consistent 50-55 start guy. That is the maximum threshold of where you want your starter at in today's NHL. I think we've all, in the last 10 years or so, gained a pretty solid understanding of the idea of diminishing returns, where you play a goalie too many regular season games, their ability to last the duration of a meaningful playoff run becomes more challenging. Guys only have so much energy in the tank, and that's why it's so important to manage that regular season workload commensurate with the energy level they do have. And for a guy like Tristan Jarry, who is not a Hellebuck, a Vasilevsky, a Shesterkin, a Sorokin, trying to push for that 55-50 start mark probably isn't either tenable or, frankly, isn't a good idea. Because would you rather have 50 starts and 20 are okay, 10 are good, and you get a lot of mixed bag, and then you get some outright bad ones? No. In an ideal world, you would like the majority of your goaltender starts to be competitive. They don't need to be great. They don't need to be steal the game, but they need to be solid enough that your team has a chance to win the game in front of them. That's all the Oilers ever ask of their goalies in this era. They're not asking you to steal it for them, to win the game. They are asking you, can we keep the game close enough? Can you not sink us? Can you make enough saves that we make enough plays in front of you that we make the difference between winning and losing? I just realized I haven't said one of my favorite slogans since I've started hosting the show now, since Stuart Skinner got traded, and I just went to say it, and then I remembered Stuart Skinner's not the goalie anymore. My saying has always been, if the Oilers need Stuart Skinner to be the guy, they're going to lose. He is not a steal-the-game goalie. But if he's just a guy, one of the pieces on the team in the path to a victory, he can do that. Now, Tristan Jarry, when he's healthy, same deal. If Tristan Jarry just needs to be one of several contributors every night, the Oilers are going to have relatively smooth sailing once he's back in the lineup. But if Pickard is going to need to steal games, he doesn't have the capacity to do that with any real consistency. And you would be silly to be mad at him for not being able to do that, because that's just not the caliber of player he is. And it is important, and it is something I do want to emphasize here. When a player is put in a position that they cannot succeed in, that is on coaching. That is on the people who put together the roster. I'm not mad that Calvin Pickard is on the Oilers. I am mad that the Oilers keep asking Calvin Pickard to make starts at the NHL level when he has given them the 10-ish, 11 games so far this year of demonstrable proof that he does not have it anymore. And I think Connor Ingram, we talked about him yesterday, he's a nice story. I can at least talk myself into a world where Ingram can be a passable NHL backup for a short period of time. That said, I think he definitely needs more conditioning. I definitely think he needs more game reps. This is someone who, at his age of 28, still does not have a huge NHL track record of games played. When you are a goalie, that work is so integral in your developmental stages. You want your 200-300 of developmental games between juniors, college, Europe, the AHL. And then you want another 200 or 300 starts at the NHL level before you really get a baseline understanding of how good one of these guys is, because the position is so volatile, because you have the capacity to not have to do a whole lot. And that's kind of the secret of how the Oilers have escaped a lot of the last 2 years, is they've been a really good team in front of their goaltenders. And that in of itself has made the workload manageable for guys who aren't that good. And it's unfortunate the Oilers are in this boat because Jari's hurt. You hope it's not for long. And then the other thing I have written down, they need to upgrade their third line center spot. I said before it'd be nice if Adam Henrique could play better. I think at this point, that's probably a lost cause as far as offensive production goes. I think Henrique, anything you get from him offensively is effectively gravy because he just doesn't have a lot left in the tank. And I think when you look at the teams of the last couple of years that have won the Stanley Cup, that third line center has been an active contributor. The ones that come to mind, Anton Lundell for Florida, that was arguably Florida's best 5-on-5 line last year in the postseason. Him, Esto Luosterainen, and Brad Marchand, because they got to play against other teams' third and fourth lines as a third line, and they were outright dominant in their control of games. Then you think about those Tampa teams with Yanni Gourde and Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow. You think about some of the depth pieces for Colorado, some of the depth pieces for the Golden Knights, and you start to understand that as great as the Oilers' top six looks on paper and as good as the 5-on-5 metrics have been, you're going to still need more offense. That's been the shortcoming in each of the last two postseasons, is ultimately Florida scored more goals than you lost. And until the Oilers can meaningfully address that by getting a true third line center commensurate with what's expected to win a Stanley Cup, they're probably going to end up not being able to score enough. Again, the player I have written down is not having a great season, but the salary can be retained. You'll get him for 2 more years, and that's Vincent Trocheck, someone who's on pace for something in the ballpark of 40 points. He missed quite a bit of time through the middle chunk of the season. He's back now. He's been okay in the games he's played in. I think he's definitely overrated for what he is with the Rangers, but I think in a third line center role, if you could flank him with Matthew Savoy and then maybe an Ike Howard or maybe a Quinn Hudson, you could be a little more enticed to a third line that can meaningfully contribute offense. And if you get the Rangers to retain half and he's coming in at less than $3 million per year, then you start to talk yourself into, okay, our top 9 on paper could be outright dominant. And then if we can get a goalie like Marc-Andre Fleury, who's only going to cost money, we're not even going to have to do a whole lot assets-wise. So all of that's to say, the Oilers have a decent roster that is starting to come together. The biggest concern is getting a goalie that can play the games Tristan Jarry does not. Beyond that, I think you need a meaningful upgrade as the third line center. But this roster looks a little bit better, a lot closer than it did, say, 2 or 3 weeks ago when the injuries were piling up and I was a little uncertain whether or not Connor was going to wake out of that malaise that had ensconced him through October and November. That will do it for this edition of Locked On Oilers. Thank you so much to everybody that made Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you get your shows. And if you need a last-minute holiday gift or someone keeps asking what you want, make it easy. Ask for the Everydayer Club. Ad-free episodes of this show, exclusive Discord server access, and more. Subscriptions can be gifted through the link in the show notes. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure your second listen is Locked On NHL Game Night. Thank you to everyone. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.